What is going on, YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. Guys, today we're talking about the best 5 smallmouth baits, in my opinion, you can throw to catch those big smallmouths. So if you like this stuff, stay tuned. We're going to get going right now. Alright guys, so the very first bait that, in my opinion, is going to catch you the most smallmouth possible is the Ned Rig. Okay, if you've watched my videos, you know, huge fan of the Ned Rig. And I'm telling you, throwing it on this EWG Ned Locks jig head made by Z-Man, which also makes the Ned Rig. Okay, these little TRD baits. Guys, this is my favorite setup. This extra wide gap hook is gonna make sure that you don't get hung up on stuff. This is just like throwing a Texas rig. Okay, I love throwing a Texas rig. I don't get hung up a lot when I throw it. And this is just like it. It's a small profile bait, has a lot of action to it. And guys, when this is bumping across those rocks, those smallmouth go nuts for it, guys. This is probably what I've caught the most smallmouth I've ever caught. And I've caught it on these. All right, I'll place the link in the description box for these Ned Locks, Ned heads. These things are awesome. So this is the 5 size, which is, I think, the heaviest one they make. And I like that when I'm wade fishing. That way I can make a really long cast. It has a lot of weight behind it. I can throw it way out there and retrieve it way across the river. It has this little bitty lock on it. It keeps the plastic in place. That way it doesn't slip down on that hook. And then that extra wide gap hook allows for that bait to slide out of the way. You got to get a nice hook up when you do get hooked up on that bass, and guys, you're going to pull them in every single time. All right, all you have to do is expose that right there, sink the barb into the plastic itself, and you got a nice weedless rig. Okay, the colors I like to throw, so this right here is the PB&J. It's got the brown and the purple. I've found it is an awesome color, guys. I really like this one. Also, you can't go wrong with the old green pumpkin. We got some white smoke, which would mimic like a shad or a baitfish color, minnow, and anything with chartreuse on it. Okay, this is like a mix of green pumpkin chartreuse, and then we have the copper truce. It's like the same thing, it's just got copper flake in it. Because I found all of these work very well, and if you're not throwing it, I believe you're missing out on a lot of good bass. All right, so that was number 1. All right, number 2 on the list is probably not going to be any surprise. That is the tube. Okay, anytime you talk about smallmouth fishing, usually fishing the tube comes up. Okay, I love fishing a tube. Look how natural that looks. And this is like a dark purplish brown color. I throw some more purples. We got some green pumpkins. We got some watermelon red colors. We got some more green pumpkin with like red mixed in. We got some like solid green pumpkin. Guys, I don't think it matters. I catch just as many on just about every single color. I don't think it matters. Guys, once again, my philosophy is it's the presentation that matters the most, not necessarily the color, okay? The color, I think, does play a role with the fish being able to see it, okay? So if you're fishing very clear water, I'm going to use very natural colors, but then again, when it's kind of dirty, probably going to throw probably the same bait, guys. It's got the black tentacles. They're going to be able to pick it up just a little bit better going through the water. And how I throw this, guys, I rig this on the stupid tube or this new style of jig head we have here. Okay, once again, just like the Ned Rig, this is going to allow you to fish weedless. I can't stand throwing a regular Ned Rig or a regular tube jig. Guys, they get hung up on everything. It's gonna make your day out on the water miserable. So throw them like this. This is an extra wide gap hook, once again. Guys, I love a Texas rig, so it just makes sense. So my tube fishing is the same way. Has a little lead head up here, has a 60-degree line tie. And guys, when you hook this up to that bait, it's gonna look like this. Okay, you can tell this is weedless once again. That hook point is buried into the plastic. and this thing just glides through the water, nice and slow. Okay, typically a tube, when you have like a regular tube insert, that thing's gonna be going through the water, just, you know, spiraling around, because the line tie is usually like a 90 degree. This is a 60 degree. Okay, it usually just floats down at kind of like a 45 degree angle and glides down into the water. Guys, these things slay the bass. I can't tell you how much you need to be throwing one of these. That is number 2. Number 3 on the list, did a video on this the other day, is mini jigs. Guys, one of the trends here is anytime I'm smallmouth fishing, I primarily like to fish on the bottom. Something that's gonna be bumping across those rocks, something that's gonna get their attention. And you gotta think for a minute here. We're talking about fishing in very shallow water. So I'm not necessarily focusing on throwing top waters. I'm not focusing on throwing something that's gonna be in the middle of the water column. I don't believe you have to do that. If I wanna go out and catch bass consistently all the time, I'm throwing something that is on the bottom. Okay, and this little mini jig here is gonna do it for me. Okay, we have a little, it's like a mix between a grub and a crawl trailer here, something that's very low in profile. It's gonna be small enough to where those smallies can actually pick them up. It's got this little weed guard here. All right, and typically, guys, I'm only throwing this green pumpkin. Obviously, it has a couple other colors on it, but it's a very subtle, natural color. I'm also gonna throw a black and blue. This is the Strike King Bitsy Bug jig, which is just a very small jig. It's a small profile. You can see how small that is. And it is a lot smaller than a regular jig would be. Okay, once again, I have a little crawl trailer on this. Makes the profile just a little bit bigger, but it gives it more action. The claws are gonna be kicking away, and that skirt is gonna be moving through the water also. Guys, those smallies are going to kill it. And guys, the hookup ratio on these are excellent. Once you feel that bite, you set the hook, that bad boy is coming in. All right, if you're not fishing a mini jig for smallies, you're missing out, guys. That is number 3 on the list. Let's move on to number 4. Guys, number 4 on the list is one bait that I've caught probably the most bass ever. We're talking largemouth and smallmouth. And if you're not throwing this, guys, for both of these, you're not catching as many bass as you could be. And that is just a Texas rig, crawl or bug. Bugs and crawls, guys, they kill the bass. Okay, so right here I have a beaver style bait, which is just like a regular creature bait. It's got all kinds of little phalanges down here. It's got the body up here. It's got some ribs on it. It's gonna displace water. And I use this on an extra wide gap hook, and I would typically put like a 3/16 ounce bullet weight up here, something that's gonna keep it down in the water when I'm trying to fish it through that current for these smallmouth bass. All right, these things are awesome. I've caught numerous 5-pound largemouth on these, and guys, for smallmouth, I've pulled in quite a few 3-pounders on these. So you might think this is kind of a larger profile bait, because I've even caught rock bass on these. Little bitty rock bass that are only this big, like a little bitty baby fish is what we think of when we think of a rock bass. They've picked these up. So the larger profile is not gonna be a problem for a smallmouth, I promise you. A regular crawl is awesome because in a smallmouth's diet, especially on a river system where we're talking about, this is kind of off of my experiences here, these crawfish are their main food source. So if you're not throwing something that mimics their food source, you're doing yourself an injustice and you're really gonna miss out on catching fish. Guys, this green pumpkin color is very natural. I'm gonna be throwing that when, you know, the water is very clear, it's just barely stained. I'm gonna be throwing this black and blue when it's more of a muddy or dirty consistency. So once again, if you're not throwing these, you should be, you should try it out. That is number 4 on the list. All right, number 5 on the list is something we fished the other day. I did a video on. These I've been using since I was a kid, and I freaking love using these for smallmouth bass, and that is a crankbait. With a crankbait, I usually use a square bill crankbait for shallow water fishing. Square bill is gonna be able to deflect off cover very nicely, okay? It's gonna be using a very erratic action going through the water, This is gonna be bumping off of rocks, it's gonna be bumping off of logs, whatever's in the water. That is what is gonna key in those fish and get a reaction strike out of this. Okay, this is mimicking a bait fish. Other colors you can throw that will mimic crayfish in the spring and winter time are gonna be these orange colors. You can see it has like a crawl pattern painted on it. Because I keep it simple with the colors, I usually throw chartreuse. I'll throw some sexy shad colors. I really like to throw these gold colors on river. It's something about a gold crankbait, those smallmouth, freaking love. All right, when it comes to the size, I would keep it between like a 2-inch version and maybe about a 1.5-inch version. Okay, and you can't go wrong. These KVD, this is a 2.5, and then I also fish the 1.5 KVD version from Strike King a lot. That's probably my go-to is the 1.5 because these things are awesome. You fish these anywhere from 3 to 5 feet deep. Very, very effective when it comes to smallmouth bass, especially when they're out actively feeding. You really got to get a reaction strike out of the bass when this is going through the water. All right, so that was number 5 on the list, square bill crankbait. Okay guys, you might be asking yourself, well, what do you throw all of these on? What type of gear? What type of line? Okay, I would say for all of these, and I keep it very simple with my smallmouth philosophy. Okay, I use a spinning rod for all of these. Okay, if I was gonna be using a Texas rig for largemouth, okay, I would throw that on a bait cast rod, medium heavy. But for smallmouth in particular, which what we're talking about today, I would throw the Ned Rig, I would throw the tube, the Bitsy Bug jigs, all of these guys, I would throw them on a medium power spinning rod. Okay, with, it doesn't matter what type of reel, it doesn't really matter, it doesn't have to get fancy, guys. Blue collar philosophy, use what you have, right? But I would throw braid and a fluorocarbon leader. That way you can interchange all of these baits. Even the crankbait, I throw on a braid fluorocarbon leader. That braid is gonna stay on top of the water. It's not gonna allow any stretch, and then that fluorocarbon leader is gonna allow that crankbait to get down in the water column, bump across those rocks, and you're gonna be pulling those chunks in, I promise you guys. So keep it very simple. Don't overthink this. This is just, in my opinion, guys, the top 5 smallmouth baits that you should be throwing year round. It doesn't matter, year round. I catch fish on these. And you're gonna be pulling them in too, I promise. Guys, if you like these kind of videos, go ahead and hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button if you're not a member of the channel already. Turn on that notification bell. Guys, if you have any questions, comments, hit me up in that comment box below. I'd really like to hear from you on your experiences throwing these type of baits. Once again, guys, this is just my personal opinion. Don't take it to heart. Oh, he didn't say anything about a jerk bait or whatever. Guys, jerk baits are awesome. Once again, this is just my opinion. And guys, at the end of the day, keep it blue collar, and thanks for watching this video.